What's up, guys? Today we'll be putting a top end and some clutch plates in my buddy CJ's Beta 300 RX. Quick reminder that you can still enter to win the CR250. If you happen to be watching this video on Black Friday, you can use the discount code BLACKFRIDAY for 25% off your CR250 entries. This video should apply to quite a few of the Beta 2-stroke models, so I will put those year, make, and models down in the description below. Let's do it!
Begin by removing the seat using the button on the left side of the bike. Remove the hose clamp and fuel line from the carburetor in preparation for tank removal. Remove the center tank bolt using a 4mm Allen wrench, followed by the 2 shroud bolts that mount to the radiators, which are 8mm. From here, gently spread the shrouds outwards and remove the fuel tank. Remove the header using a spring puller for the 2 springs at the cylinder, and then remove the 2 remaining 8mm mounting bolts. The header should then slide right out. I opted to remove the skid plate, which makes for a cleaner job draining the coolant, and I plan to drain the transmission oil as well. Depending on which skid plate you're running, this might not be necessary. Remove the radiator cap, followed by the 8mm bolt with the crush washer behind it on the water pump in order to drain the coolant. Once that coolant flow has slowed down, you can reinstall the bolt. Remove the 10mm cylinder head hanger bolts. There are 2 uppers on each side, along with 1 bolt on the bottom that goes through the cylinder head. In this case, the left side had a zip tie I needed to cut in order to remove the hanger as well. Remove the spark plug cap, followed by the spark plug. You can use an appropriate plug wrench or a 21mm will do. Remove the coolant line from the head. The clamp can be loosened with a screwdriver or a 7mm wrench or socket. You might find that the cylinder head has 5 12mm bolts and this anti-tamper bolt if the bike has never had the top end done. They do make a bit intended to fit this bolt, and I would have saved myself about 45 minutes if I had that bit. I would highly recommend buying a replacement bolt before tackling this project. To remove this bolt without the correct tool, I started by trying to hammer the pin down in order to fit a 6mm Allen wrench. I was able to get a 6mm in there, but stripped the head without making any progress turning the bolt. I tried dremeling a notch and then using an impact screwdriver, still no luck. I also didn't want to beat too hard right on the cylinder head. I ended up hammering a 12-point 12mm wrench onto the head of the bolt, and with the help of some heat from the MAP gas torch, I was finally able to break the bolt. With that hiccup out of the way, forward progress could continue. The head was rather tight to the cylinder, and I applied some upward pressure by tugging on an Allen wrench through the head. The exhaust flange needs to be removed in order to make enough space to slide the cylinder out, and that is mounted with 3 8mm bolts. The power valve cover needs to be removed, and this had yet another anti-tamper bolt. This one was easy to flatten the pin using a hammer and a punch, and from there I was able to utilize a 3mm Allen wrench. The other 2 bolts are standard 8mm. And you need to pop this small clip out before disconnecting the arm. It pops out, rotates, and then slides down out of the hole. From there, the arm will pop right off of the ball. Now it's time to remove the 4 13mm cylinder base nuts. You'll need to use a wrench to get to the one under the power valve, and be careful not to slip and damage the arm. The final nut is hidden behind the cover on the left side of the motor, which is secured by 4 8mm bolts. I tried to slip the cylinder out with this radiator hose still in place, and it may have been possible, but I think it was more effort than it was worth. I loosened this hose clamp using a 7mm wrench, removed the 2 8mm mounting bolts from the right radiator, and then popped this hose to create some more space. From there, the cylinder slipped right off. With a rag in the crankcase to protect from dropping the piston clip into the bottom end, I popped the left side clip out before removing the piston. I cleaned up the cylinder with some contact cleaner, and the inside still looked mint. These O-rings took a little persuasion to get out. Be careful never to pry, as it may damage the surface. I actually used a needle to pop the first little bit up before pulling the old O-rings out. I checked ring end gap, and Beta says the gap should be no larger than 0.4mm. We had a gap of about 0.25mm on each ring. Note, if piston rings have a letter marking on one side, that side faces up. I installed the rings onto the piston and then installed a new base gasket. The Beta top-end gasket kit comes with 4 gasket sizes, which are 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6mm. Stock is 0.5 from what I found, so that is the gasket that I opted to use. After applying a generous amount of 2-stroke oil to the bearing and piston, the rod received a new roller bearing, and I slid the piston on top. Note that I already installed the right side circlip on the bench to make my life a little easier, and once again placed a rag in the crankcase to prevent a major headache if I were to drop the clip. Clip install went smoothly enough. This is a tricky part to give tips for, as you really just need to learn what works for you. I generally rely on doing most of the job with my fingers and then persuade the last edge in carefully with a flat blade screwdriver. Note that the open end of the circlip must be facing up or down and not horizontal, as the RPM of the engine could actually compress the clip and cause it to come out. Slip the cylinder over the piston while carefully compressing the rings with your fingers over their respective locating pins on the piston. Torque those 13mm base nuts to 30 Newton meters or 22 foot-pounds. For the ones you have to tighten with a wrench, use your best judgment. Reinstall the Powervalve arm and be sure you hear a defined click when popping the arm back onto the ball, as the clip will not install if it is not seated correctly. Install new O-rings before reinstalling the cylinder head. Head bolts should be torqued in a crisscross pattern starting at 15 Newton meters or 11 foot-pounds and then moving up to 27 Newton meters or 20 foot-pounds. Reinstall the exhaust flange with a new gasket. I did spend some time cleaning some carbon buildup off of that part using PrimeMX cleaning wheels on the Dremel. Reinstall radiator hoses and hose clamps, and if you removed the right radiator like I did, reinstall those 8mm bolts and the louver. Now might be a good time to replace your spark plug if yours looks anything like CJ's did, and then you can put the spark plug cap in place, install that left power valve cover if you haven't already, and remount the cylinder head hanger plates. Those bolts should be torqued at 35 Newton meters or 26 foot-pounds, and the manual recommends medium strength thread locker for the 4 upper bolts. Now we are going to replace the clutch pack. If you want to skip this section, you can move along to 7 minutes and 49 seconds in the video. You do not have to drain the transmission oil to do this, but it was time for a transmission oil change anyway. I removed that 13mm bolt and allowed the oil to drain. I then laid the bike over on the left side. It makes access to that clutch a lot easier and a cleaner job, and I removed that outer clutch cover. These bolts are such low torque that you can do this without a special tool. Simply put the bike in gear if the clutch is trying to spin on you, and that should be plenty to allow you to get these bolts out. You can slide the clutch pack out, carefully working your way around that rear brake pedal if you opted to leave it installed like I did. Note CJ is missing his rear brake pedal spring, so you'll have to uninstall and reinstall that when you tackle this yourself. Bathe the new clutch plates in oil before beginning installation. There are 2 plates different than the others, and they should be packaged separately or marked with blue on the sides. These are your most inner and most outer plates. The only other thing you need to pay attention to is that the steels do have a direction. They have a softer, more rounded edge on one side, and that side faces in towards the engine. Make sure that you center that Belleville washer when reinstalling, and note the setting on the washer tension adjuster, as the 3 levels can impact clutch pull, feel, and performance. I left the adjuster where it was set and torqued the bolts to 10 Newton meters or 7 foot-pounds. From there, I reinstalled the outer clutch cover with those 8mm bolts and was able to move along to button up the rest of the bike. The bike needed some fresh coolant along with 850 milliliters of transmission oil. I reinstalled the header pipe and the fuel tank, and before fully buttoning the bike back up, made sure that it ran.
And that is a top end install and clutch pack replacement on a 2022 Beta 300RX. Again, this process will be very similar for lots of different Beta 2-strokes. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Leave me any questions you may have in the comment section below. Be sure to click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this.